All right, so buckle up, everyone, because this deep dive is going to be a wild one. We're going deep into the world of J-Ho Low and the 1MDB scandal.
Yeah, this is a pretty unbelievable story.
It is.
It's kind of global finance and excess and, yeah, really kind of captivating.
Definitely. Now, for those of you who may not be familiar with J-Ho Low, he's this young Malaysian financier, actually a Wharton grad, pulled off, I gotta say, one of the biggest financial heists in history.
Yeah, it's truly audacious what he was able to pull off.
Yeah, and for this deep dive, we're going to be drawing mainly from the book Billion Dollar Whale. It really gives you that behind-the-scenes look at Low's, rise and his spectacular fall from grace.
It's really well researched, and it does such a great job of capturing this sort of, like you said, excess of the 21st century. It's all about, globalization, ambition, and that dangerous allure of wealth and power.
Yeah, for sure. Let's start with Low's early life. He grew up in Penang, Malaysia. Had, I guess you could say, a comfortable upbringing, not extravagant or anything.
Right. I mean, compared to what he would later become accustomed to, it was pretty modest.
Definitely. And then from there, he went to these super elite schools like Harrow and Wharton.
Right.
So that must have been a huge shift going from, that more modest upbringing to suddenly being surrounded by future billionaires.
Yeah, can you imagine being surrounded by classmates who are, casually talking about their families' private jets, their yachts,
Oh, definitely not.
Yeah, it's a whole different world, and it seems like that kind of exposure really fueled Low's ambition, He wanted to be seen as their equal, no matter the cost.
I mean, that makes sense. If you're suddenly thrown into that world, you would definitely feel the pressure to keep up, to fit in.
Yeah, and Billion Dollar Whale even talks about how he told classmates at Harrow that he was like a prince of Malaysia.
A prince? Really? Wow. Talk about crafting an image.
Exactly. Even back then, he was already creating this, this persona. And this fascination with image becomes, I think, really crucial to his strategy.
Okay, so you're saying that this wasn't just him trying to be cool. It was more calculated than that.
Much more. Take, for instance, this infamous shampoo nightclub party that he threw at Wharton.
I've heard about this.
He insisted on having his name, plastered all over the flyers.
Oh, really?
But get this, he actually struggled to pay the final bill.
So even early on, there was this, disconnect between the image that he was projecting and his actual financial reality.
Exactly. He was already mastering the art of illusion, creating this aura of success, even when it wasn't entirely real. And these lavish parties weren't just about having fun.
I was going to ask, what was the point? Was he just trying to impress people?
It was much more strategic. It was all about attracting powerful figures, potential investors, people who could help him get ahead.
Okay, I'm starting to see how this is all connected. So he's creating this image, building this network. What was his next move?
Well, that's when he sets his sights on 1MDB, Malaysia's sovereign wealth fund. Basically, it's a state-owned investment fund designed to generate revenue for the country.
Okay.
And Low, he uses his connections to the Saudi royal family, specifically Prince Turki, to propose this, lucrative joint venture.
Okay, so how did he manage to convince them? What was the pitch?
Well, he presented it as this, can't-miss opportunity, a partnership between 1MDB and a company founded by Prince Turki called PetroSaudi.
PetroSaudi, okay. And this was the first big heist.
Yes. And the book really gets into the murky details of this whole joint venture, how almost immediately after the deal is signed, $700 million just vanished into accounts controlled by Low.
$700 million just gone like that. How is that even possible?
Well, that's the shocking part. There were multiple banks involved, including Deutsche Bank and Coutts, that facilitated these transfers with seemingly very few questions asked.
Wait, so it wasn't just Low then. There were other institutions complicit in this.
Exactly. It's a really, I think, glaring example of the systemic failures within the global financial system.
Yeah, that's pretty disturbing.
It is. And it really makes you wonder how many other schemes like this are slipping through the cracks.
Okay, so we have Low with his carefully crafted image, his powerful connections. He pulls off this massive heist. $700 million disappears. What does he do next?
Well, this is where the story takes a turn towards the truly extravagant. He goes on a spending spree that would make, even the most seasoned celebrity blush.
He goes on a spending spree, huh? So we're talking luxury real estate, art, jewelry, private jets.
Oh, you name it, he bought it.
And he even gets involved in Hollywood, right?
Yeah, through Red Granite Pictures. They produced The Wolf of Wall Street, among other films.
Oh, wow, I didn't realize that. So it's like he was trying to buy his way into legitimacy.
Exactly. He needed to create this facade of being this, incredibly successful businessman. All these purchases were meant to legitimize his wealth, make it seem like, hey, I earned all this.
It's like he was trying to build a real-life version of the image he'd been projecting all along.
Exactly. And he was playing the part to perfection. He even bought that Time Warner Center penthouse in New York. Remember?
Yeah, the one that was like a symbol of, ambition and making it to the elite.
Yeah, exactly. He wanted to be seen as one of them, rubbing shoulders with the real billionaires.
So this spending spree, it was all part of the con.
You can say that. It was about maintaining the illusion, drawing in even more investors and powerful figures.
Like, who else did he manage to get into his circle?
Well, there's this guy, Yusuf Al-Otaiba. He was the UAE ambassador to the U.S.
Wow, so now he's connected to diplomats.
Yeah, and it doesn't stop there. He also gets close to Tim Leisner, a top banker at Goldman Sachs.
Goldman Sachs, like the investment banking giant.
Yep, the one and only.
So now he's not just throwing parties and buying stuff. He's building this network of influence that goes way beyond just money. It's about power, connections, protection.
Precisely. And these connections were crucial to him accessing even greater sums of money.
Okay, wait. How did he get even more money after that first $700 million?
Well, this is where things get even more complex and audacious, frankly. We're talking about billions of dollars now.
Billions. Okay, I'm all ears.
So 1MDB, they started issuing bonds. You know what a bond is, right?
It's like a loan that a government or company issues to raise money.
Exactly. And investors buy those bonds, expecting to get paid back with interest.
Okay, so 1MDB was issuing these bonds. What did Lowe do?
Well, on the surface, it looked like they were using those bonds to fund development projects in Malaysia. But behind the scenes, Lowe was manipulating these deals to funnel the money into shell companies under his control.
Shell companies, meaning?
Fake companies, basically, set up to hide the real owners and make it impossible to trace the money.
So he was basically laundering the money through these fake companies.
Yeah, and he had help from some very influential people. One of the key figures was this guy, Khadem El-Koubaisi.
What was that?
He was the managing director of IPIs, which was a major sovereign wealth fund in Abu Dhabi.
Wait, so another sovereign wealth fund got involved?
Yeah, and this shows just how global this scandal really was.
So 1MDB, PetroSaudi, IPI, it's like a tangled web of money and power.
And at the center of it all, Kusha Lowe, pulling the strings.
Okay, so he's pulling off these even bigger schemes now. Billions of dollars are flowing through his hands. Did anyone suspect anything?
Well, for a while, he was able to keep everything under wraps. He was careful, he covered his tracks well, but eventually, cracks started to appear.
How so? What happened?
Well, a few things happened. First, there was this guy, Xavier Justo. He was a former employee of PetroSaudi.
Okay, what about him?
He had some pretty damning evidence of Lowe's dealings, and he was willing to talk.
Ah, so he became a whistleblower.
Exactly. And then there were these journalists at the Edge and Sarawak report who started investigating the whole thing.
So the media started sniffing around?
Yep, they were following the money trail, digging deeper, asking uncomfortable questions.
That must have made things pretty uncomfortable for Lowe. How did he react?
Well, at first he tried to dismiss the accusations, calling them politically motivated. Typical damage control.
But it didn't really work, did it?
No, not at all. The evidence was mounting, and the Malaysian government started getting really nervous.
What do you mean, nervous?
Well, they were in deep with Lowe. The book describes this dramatic raid on AmBank, one of Malaysia's biggest banks.
Oh, I remember reading about that. What did they find?
They uncovered secret bank accounts belonging to Prime Minister Najib Razak.
No way. So the Prime Minister himself was involved.
Yeah, and guess what? There were massive deposits from this shell company called Tenori Finance.
Tenor Finance. Didn't that come up earlier?
Yep, the same one that was linked to Lowe and that PetroSaudi deal. It turned out that Tenori Finance had funneled hundreds of millions of dollars into Najib Razak's personal accounts.
Wow, so the Prime Minister was directly implicated.
Oh yeah, it was a huge scandal.
So what happened next?
Well, with the whistleblowers, the journalists, and the evidence piling up, it was impossible to keep it quiet anymore. The scandal exploded, and it wasn't just a Malaysian problem anymore. It became international.
Okay, so how did the international community get involved? What happened next?
Well, this whole thing triggered investigations by the FBI, the DOJ, and even the Swiss authorities. And these investigations, they led to some serious consequences. They started seizing assets, arresting people involved in the scheme.
Wait, so they actually started making arrests? That's crazy. What about Lowe? Did they catch him?
That's the thing, they didn't. He managed to disappear.
He's on the run.
Yep, vanished. He became a fugitive, constantly moving, trying to stay one step ahead of the authorities.
You're kidding. He managed to escape, even with the whole world watching.
It sounds unbelievable, right? But yeah, according to Billion Dollar Whale, he was living a pretty lavish lifestyle in hiding, hopping between luxury places in China and Thailand.
That's incredible. So we've got Lowe on the run, investigations are heating up, and the prime minister's caught up in the scandal. What happened next?
Well, the fallout from this whole thing was huge. It sent shockwaves through Malaysia, through the global financial world. It wasn't just about the money, it was about the betrayal of trust. The Malaysian people, they were demanding justice.
Yeah, I bet. I mean, imagine finding out that your country's wealth fund, the money that's supposed to benefit everyone, has been looted like that. It's infuriating.
Absolutely. And the Malaysian people, they took to the streets demanding answers, demanding accountability.
So what happened to the institutions involved? Like Goldman Sachs, for example, they helped orchestrate those bond deals. Did they face any consequences?
Oh, yeah, they definitely came under fire. I mean, think about it. They earned something like, what, $600 million in fees for just 3 bond deals.
$600 million. That's insane.
It is. And it raised a lot of questions about their due diligence, their ethics. Regulators in the U.S. and other countries launched investigations.
So did anyone at Goldman Sachs actually get in trouble?
Well, in the end, the bank agreed to pay billions of dollars in fines and settlements.
Billions. Wow.
Yeah, it was a hefty price to pay. But as far as criminal charges go, no senior executives were ever held personally accountable.
So the bank paid up, but the individuals involved, they got off scot-free.
Pretty much. Which, a lot of people saw as a slap on the wrist.
I can understand that. It doesn't exactly inspire confidence in the system. What about Prime Minister Najib Razak? I mean, he was right at the center of this whole mess, with millions flowing into his personal accounts. What happened to him?
For a while, it looked like he might actually get away with it. He used his power to shut down investigations. He even fired the attorney general who was looking into the case.
Wow, he was really trying to cover his tracks.
Yeah. And within Malaysia, he was able to control the narrative for a while, discrediting the accusations, claiming it was all a political conspiracy.
So what changed? How did he finally get brought to justice?
Well, international pressure definitely played a role. But the real turning point came from within Malaysia itself.
What do you mean?
The Malaysian people, they just had enough. They were fed up with the corruption, the lies, the abuse of power. The book talks about these massive protests organized by this group called Bersih.
Why, I've heard of Bersih. They're like a pro-democracy movement, right?
Exactly. They were demanding Najib's resignation, calling for free and fair elections and end to corruption.
So it was a real grassroots movement, people power in action. That's inspiring.
It is. And it really shows the power of people coming together to demand change.
What was the outcome of all this?
Well, all that public pressure, combined with the evidence that was coming out from those international investigations, it created a political climate that Najib just couldn't control anymore. In the 2018 election, he was voted out of office.
Wow, so the people actually succeeded in removing a corrupt leader from power? That's amazing.
Yeah, it was a historic moment for Malaysia, and it sent a clear message that no one, not even the prime minister, is above the law.
So what happened after the election? Did the new government pursue the case against Najib?
Oh yeah, they reopened the 1MDB investigation right away. Najib was arrested, put on trial, and eventually he was convicted on multiple charges, including abuse of power, money laundering, criminal breach of trust.
Wow, so justice was served in the end?
Well, at least partially. I mean, he was sentenced to 12 years in prison, which is significant.
Definitely. But there's still one big piece missing from this puzzle, right? What about Jaho Low? Did they ever catch him?
That's the biggest mystery of this whole saga. Despite all the efforts, all the international warrants, he's still out there, a fugitive.
It's almost like he vanished into thin air.
The U.S. Department of Justice seized a ton of assets connected to him, including that luxury yacht, the Equanimity.
Oh, yeah, I remember that. It was like a floating palace.
But Joe Holo himself, he's managed to evade capture. There are rumors that he's living in China, maybe under the protection of the government there, but no one knows for sure.
So he's out there somewhere, living off his ill-gotten gains, while the people of Malaysia are still dealing with the fallout from his schemes.
It's a pretty frustrating ending, to be honest.
I bet. It's like he orchestrated this grand illusion of wealth and influence, and then just disappeared like a phantom.
And that's what makes this whole story so compelling, so disturbing. It really highlights the dark side of globalization, the ease with which money can be moved around the world, the challenges of holding the powerful accountable.
And it's a reminder that even in the 21st century, with all our technology and surveillance, someone can just vanish, disappear without a trace.
Yeah, it's a sobering thought.
Well, this deep dive has been absolutely fascinating, and I gotta say, a little bit terrifying. We've gone from lavish parties to billion-dollar heists, from the halls of power to the shadowy world of shell companies and offshore accounts. It's been a wild ride.
And it's a story that's still unfolding. We still don't know where Joho Lo is or if he'll ever face justice.
Yeah.
And the impact of his actions, the damage he caused, it's still being felt today.
It's a reminder that the fight against corruption is a constant battle, one that requires vigilance, courage, and a commitment to holding those in power accountable.
Absolutely. And it's a fight that we all have a role to play in.
Well, thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the world of Joho Lo and the 1MDB scandal. We hope you found it informative, thought-provoking, and maybe even a little bit inspiring. It's a story that reminds us that even in the face of immense power and greed, the truth can come out, and justice, even if it's delayed, can still prevail.
And that's a message worth remembering.